Good morning and welcome to The Future is Now. And I am your host, Pastor Christopher Riley. And today I have with me none other than Bishop Crystal Thomas. Bishop.
Oh, God bless you, Pastor. Amen.
God
Good to be
bless you.
here. Yes.
It's good to be here as well, for truly this is the day that the Lord has made.
Yes.
Let us rejoice and be glad in it. We have so much to be thankful for.
Absolutely.
In life, we are blessed to be exposed to giants in leadership. And this weekend, the Fort Wayne community lost one of its giants. We say that we've lost a giant, but in the body of baptized believers, we believe that being absent in the body is to be present with the Lord. Take a moment, Bishop, and talk about the late, great Dr. Wendy Robinson.
Oh, thank you so much, Pastor. And she truly was a great woman, a great leader, a great educator. Unfortunately, I had the opportunity of being hired by her. In fact, she introduced me to Dr. Fowler Finn a long time ago, like 1998, and she was the first great leader I met in this district. But having served under her as one of her principals, I found her, first of all, to be a very caring person, but she was so serious and focused about student achievement. She wanted to make sure that all students had equal opportunities to learn. She was very caring as far as her staff is concerned. We would gather for leadership meetings, and her passion and heart for learning and for excelling of all races of people certainly came through strongly. I do thank God for the opportunity of serving under her, and we learned so much from her. She was not just a leader in Fort Wayne, but she was a global leader for education. She served on many boards throughout the entire United States. She was a voice that was sought after. So often other organizations, religious and education programs now begin to foster that kind of love that she had because she was concerned about children. When I think about Dr. Robinson, I think about her ability to touch people. It wasn't just what she said and how she said it, but she would actually reach out and touch. She would come to our buildings and she would hug on the children. She was concerned about the families because so often she found their story being her story. She owned the job of being a superintendent. And every time we would get together, it was all about children learning. So sometimes I think in education, we get focused on a lot of other things, but her main driving force was, are the students learning? Are the students achieving? Are we providing the right kind of environment now that fosters students now that are really tackle the world? She was very innovative in her thinking, so many things that had never been done before, she was able to garner that kind of leadership. And when you think about Fort Wayne, imagine now, the Fort Wayne Community Schools became the largest district in the state of Indiana. So she surpassed all others with her leadership, a dynamic woman, and she will definitely be missed and has been missed since her retirement, but definitely missed during these days. And I want to say on behalf of our entire community that we offer our condolences to that family, knowing that we are praying for them and that there is a better place coming.
Absolutely. And we talk about giving someone their flowers when
Yes.
they can smell them. I'm grateful that the district was able to name the Face Building
Yes.
after
Yes.
Dr. Wendy Robinson, which is located on the corner of Breckenridge and Clinton. And it's the Dr. Wendy Robinson Family and Community Education Center.
And you know, Pastor, she was always so appreciative of whatever we did for children.
Yes.
And to find that we did something that was over and beyond what we call a job description is truly commendable. I can remember countless times during my meetings with her, the things that I was able to do, and not just me, but my entire colleagues, all of us, all the leadership team at FWCS, when we did something that was over and beyond the call of duty, then she was so appreciative. And imagine the kind of environment she set where we had the freedom now to go beyond the job description to service our families. So I will always be grateful for that opportunity.
Again, we do share our condolences and the prayers of the community and the prayers for the family of Dr. Wendy Robinson first African American woman to serve as superintendent, took a school system that was in trouble,
Yes.
and the school district became the largest school district in the state of Indiana. Her legacy lives on.
Yes.
As we reflect on the legacy of Dr. Robinson, you said something that was really key and critical, making sure students learn,
Yes.
making sure they learn. And today we're going to talk about learning in several different environments, learning and educational environments everywhere. What does that mean to you?
Okay. I think that environment is key. And if we were to look at nature today as we speak, Pastor, we can see all kind of environmental issues that really get the attention of many. It's on CNN, it's on our local news. We think about what's happening in the weather. We think about global warming, all the acid rain in our oceans, deforestation, all of these natural things that are coming together and are really getting our attention. But it's all tied to the environment. And I think education is key along that same line, that we have the opportunity and the responsibility of setting the kind of environment where all students can learn. And if I were to start with just one point, it really is all about feeling safe.
Yes.
When people feel safe and they feel comfortable because we have set boundaries, because we have made expectations clear, it becomes a safe environment for students to learn, to make a mistake. We realize that they're just young people growing up, coming into their own, and to be able to feel safe in doing that now opens up the mind. It frees the prefrontal cortex. There's no stress. They're not in fight or flight mode, but they're really ready to learn. And so I think when we go into classrooms at all levels, just having teachers that are warm and inviting and that generally are concerned about the children, about that young person, it creates a place where, hey, I feel good here. I feel safe here. I can learn here. I can ask a question if I don't know something without fear of shame or embarrassment. And so feeling safe, I think, is one of the first things we want to do in order to set that kind of environment, not just at school, but also at home.
Absolutely.
I want my children and my grandchildren to feel safe to make a mistake. After all, we were young once. We made them
Yes.
too. So we've all made mistakes, but we learn from those mistakes and letting them know that all of life is just a lesson to make them better. So I think feeling safe and setting those boundaries and expectations is key for establishing the kind of environment where we can really not just learn, but soar in that learning process.
Absolutely. And as a principal, I'm sure you've had an opportunity to partner with community organizations of various different types. Talk about some of your most innovative partnerships.
Well, I think to begin with, as my role as principal, probably the most innovative, where the rubber really meets the road. There were a lot of things externally because it was a partnership all the time. But probably one of the most important things that I think we were able to do to really allow our test scores to soar and kids to learn was what I called at that time Parent University. Because I recognized that not only were the students struggling in some areas, but parents were struggling in how can I help my child? How can I help my child be successful on state tests? How can I help them every day? How can I really let them know that school is important? Growing up, I'm telling you, school is important in our household.
Yes.
When I'm the oldest of 6, and for all of us, education was the driving force of my parents. We went to school really almost literally dead or alive. There's no excuse. You were going to be at school. But when I established Parent University several years ago, at the school I was assigned, I realized that parents really wanted to help their children. They just didn't know how. So I could and was able to have partnerships everywhere, but the partnership I made with those families was just so key and relevant. So we would invite parents in, they would come, and we would have an area of study that we really wanted to focus on. And we would talk about that with parents, but not just talk about it. We had activities prepared for them to really engage in the learning process themselves. And I can remember Dad saying, oh, wow, I never knew that. I never understood it like
Right.
that. But when they would leave, we'd give them a packet. And in that packet was everything we just used to teach that concept. So now the parents were able to go home and reinforce that with their young people. it was so important now for us to align what parents do at home to the expectations at school. We found there was a misalignment there. So during our parent university, we were able to align what students did in the classroom and what we asked parents to do at home.
Right.
I can remember talking to a dad once, and he just really touched my heart. It still comes to my mind. And he said, I don't understand why my child is doing poorly in math. We do this every night. We work on these math facts. And so I was listening to him, but more just listening, Pastor, I was feeling his pain because he was concerned about his daughter's education. And so I pulled out a sample released item from one of the iLearn tests. I said, I want you to look at this. He looked at the complexity of the exam and he said, my goodness, I see what you mean. I said, but we're going to unwrap this and give you the strategies so that your child can be successful. And we did that. On a regular basis, it was Parent University. Parents enjoyed coming. We had great attendance, and scores just began to just soar. We went from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 to 70, even some areas 90% of students passing, because we empowered the parents, the student's first teacher. We empowered them now to own education, but now we gave them information, good information, as how they can really unlock what they need to unlock and learn it themselves to be able to teach their child.
Did you patent Parent University?
Well, in a way, yes. There were others that found out what we were doing and asked questions about it. And we also gave parents certificates. So after you attended so many classes, and we honored you just like we honored the children. And so we gave them certificates about the different kinds of classes they had attended at our school. But we have had other partners, and one really stands out in my mind. It was a church across the street, and they did wonderful things for our school. But I think the thing that made the biggest difference was unlocking for parents what children are being asked to do and complete in the classroom, and that alignment now was key to our success.
Tell me this, was that pre or post-COVID?
That was before COVID.
Okay.
That was before COVID, for sure. I think COVID made everybody teachers.
Yes.
It really made parents teachers. It really, I think, augmented technologically across the board the use of different technical skills to be able to get learning done. And I think it allowed parents to see some of what teachers deal with in the classroom when it comes to learning. I know I have a 3-year-old grandson, and he likes to do a lot of things, but reading is not one of them. And so whenever I say, okay, let's get a book, it's like, even at 3, oh God, here we go, a book. But once we get started in the book, he can tell you the characters, he can count different areas and elements in the text. So there's so much he can pull out of it. But I could say, well, it's not going to make him happy, so we're not going to do it. And that's absolutely the wrong thing to do, I think, because that's not what life is like. They need to be able to have a challenge, face that challenge, and be successful. And so now we've grown to the place where if I say, let's get a book, he's better. He's 100% better than he was. Before, it was like pulling teeth.
One of the things in the higher education community that we've done to help our K-12 partners overcome those challenges and make those connections with students and parents is to provide career exploration programming.
Yes.
And the importance of starting early, as young as the first grade, exposing young people to opportunities and letting them know that, yes, they can be an entrepreneur. It doesn't matter what you see in your community or don't see, but the sky is truly the limit.
That is so true. And thank you for saying that, because even in the elementary schools, there is a shift towards problem-based learning. One of the things that I think we can be guilty of as parents and as educators, and that is just kind of like killing or smothering the creativity and the curiosity that young learners bring to the learning environment. But I think if we foster that in a different kind of way and giving them real life issues And the number one thing I would say to parents today is give your children an opportunity to think. It's not about the silent child anymore.
Yes.
Because kids are asking why. They're asking what next. They're asking those pertinent questions. And so the sooner we give them opportunities to think and not just tell them, but put the situation before them, give them all the tools they need to solve the problem, and then watch them through exploration, through trial and error, begin to solve that problem on their own. It's like watching them struggle for a while, but in that struggle, they build those educational muscles. They build the skill sets to be able to think higher than they ever thought before. And then ultimately, when they solve the problem, it's time to celebrate. So I think exploration is so key. And I'm thankful that even at your level,
Yes.
that same kind of thinking is still going on, because we're lifelong learners. We
Right.
never know it all, okay? And so we're always in the seat. I tell my people all the time, we're in the seat of the learner.
Yes.
Always look for those opportunities to learn. But giving children time to think, put problems before them. And I'm not talking about paper pencil problems. It could be you're in the car. Which way do we go, and why do we go
Right.
that way? Those conversations. Let's look at the signs that we see along the way. How can we make a math problem out of the Chick-fil-A we just ordered?
Yes.
So I think looking at all those environment things that we do every day, but making those things learning experiences, asking students why and what do you think about this? We've just watched a news clip. What do you think about that? How can we
Right.
solve the problem of global warming? What are your thoughts? Because we see a new generation coming, and they are great thinkers. They're bringing things to the table that we never even dreamed of. Even that young man that was able to hack into the government. Come on,
Right.
let's give them a little bit more credit than we've given them in the past, and honor their thinking. And not only that, promote it and channel it in the right direction. It's like vegetables. We know vegetables are good for us, but not everybody likes broccoli.
Yes.
Not everybody likes green beans, but they've got to have one. So you don't say, okay, do you want a vegetable? Because obviously, at least for my grands, it'll be, no, not really.
Right.
So, but you say, do I want broccoli or green beans? So now you've put a boundary around those choices, and whatever they choose, it will be a good choice.
Exactly.
So just choose, make a good choice.
And maybe a little cheese with that broccoli.
Now you've added a few more calories, Chris.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. You were talking about learning environments, and one of the things that stuck out is the quiet classroom isn't always the classroom where the most learning is happening.
Exactly. I think there is a place for quietness.
Yes.
But during instruction, when I'm delivering the message, I can't be quiet, and I don't want them to be quiet, because their responses give me feedback as to where I need to go next.
Right.
And where did I miss it? What do I need to go back and reteach? What other opportunities do I need to give them to really experience that task differently? Because all children learn at different rates, different ways, a variety of methodology we use in instruction. But when they are too quiet, sometimes they even get overlooked.
Yes.
Because there could be a vocal person here, a vocal person there, and we're so busy responding to the vocal people that we miss a child that sits in silence. So I believe it's our job to begin to go to that child and begin to pull out information from them and let them share with us how they are mastering the content, so we'll know what we need to do next for all the children, no matter who they are. But I think the day of the quiet classroom, over. I think that's over.
Yes.
Children learn. We all learn when we are engaged.
Absolutely.
When there's high levels of engagement, everybody learns. Even the teacher learns. I remember, even as a principal, I did an affirmation every day. And I had a guest in my office. And so this one child was sent to my office, and he had made a poor choice. Kindergartner. He had made a
Yes.
poor choice. And so I asked him, I said, what should you have been doing? And he said, in front of this guest, he said, I should have been highly engaged in my learning.
Wow.
But Pastor Chris, that was our affirmation. That one of the affirmations that I give in children, that when I come into your classroom, I expect to see you highly engaged in your learning. And they would say, I am actively engaged in my learning, because we know the power of speech. We know the power of those confessions. So having them confess that I am going to be engaged in my learning, because when we are engaged, that's when we really learn. And not just physically and from the outside, what's going on with the body structures, etc., but what's what's going on in my head. When I am cognitively engaged, then I'm learning. So I think that engagement is key, and it's real difficult to discern that when people are quiet.
Right, absolutely. And you were talking about engagement and learning styles and everybody learning differently. And that young man actually was learning. He
Yes.
just made a poor choice
Right.
in that moment.
Exactly.
Because at kindergarten, he could repeat that he
Yes.
should have been highly engaged.
Right.
He was learning.
Yeah, and not just engaged, highly engaged,
engaged.
highly engaged. This is tough stuff we're teaching right now, and we need them highly engaged. That means body, soul, and spirit. I am focused now on what I
Yes.
need to learn. Yes.
All right, yes,
Yeah.
we probably have some adults that need that lesson.
Maybe even us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Highly engaged in our
Highly
learning, because
engaged in our
learning never
learning.
ends for any of us, for sure.
That's for sure.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. That's probably a different show for another day,
Yeah.
is how to remain highly engaged. So we'll have to keep that on the docket. We were talking also about the different environments, and in preparation for this show, we talked about family vacations. We talked about the family outings, and
Yes.
you mentioned a little bit earlier. So let's unpack that a little bit of how we can make vacation when it's about fun.
Right, right. Well, I mentioned that I was oldest of six, and
Yes.
every year, every summer growing up, we took a vacation. But Pastor, it was always to the same place. We either went to Georgia, where my mom's parents were, or we went to Arkansas, where my dad's parents were. So I grew up going, I knew we could predict our vacation, what it was going to be like, because we knew where we were going. And I always said when I became a parent, and I appreciate those times, and I certainly
Yes.
value times with my grandparents. Being a grandmom myself, I can really appreciate those moments. But I wanted something different for my children because, the world is changing. And when the world is changing, I think that we need to make some adjustments to be able to make sure that our kids are ready for the world. So I said, every year we're going to go someplace different. I knew the rigor of the classroom. I said, there are some things that they need to see, they need to experience. So we would go to Florida every year, but then we would take a second vacation, and that was always someplace different. I remember us going to Arizona, and we took a drive over to the Grand Canyon. We went to the Hoover Dam, so that when they saw these things in the books, in their text, they could make a connection. Because one thing about the brain is always looking for a connection. If
Yes.
something is totally distant and foreign, it takes a while for it to really tunnel through and become a part of our memory. But when we can connect it to something that they already know, that's what the brain is doing. It's linking one bit of information to another. And I wanted them to have those experiences, even across the country and beyond, to be able to relate to things that they read in the book. I mean, here I am. I'm living in this house, and yet my text is in Jamaica. So
Yes.
being able to make a connection now helps them to remember more. So we would make those family vacations fun, but we would also make them educational because they would always have a journal. They had to
Right.
write or they draw pictures about what we experienced. But in the evening, the conversation was so key because we could talk about what we saw, talk about what we heard, what we remembered, what really stood out to us, and then how we can apply it to our lives. What did you see today that made you think about your life? And we would ask those kinds of questions based upon a vacation, and it made the vacations more memorable, of course,
Right.
but more meaningful. And when I think about some of the, even culturally, some of the dynamics and diversities culturally that we face as a people, no matter who the people are, there are certain languages that we use, certain words that we use. But when we are assessed sometimes on state tests, they might not call it dinner. They might call it supper, and we don't say supper in our household.
Exactly.
So being able to know those differences, those
Right.
nuances now, that can open the door for future learning. So we would make vacation, and whether we drove or if we flew, however we got there, that was all a learning experience as well. But the journaling was key, and I gave them the opportunity to either draw or write, either one, but the conversation was important. So more so rather than what they wrote, and they knew they had, before we did the next day's activity, they knew they had to have a journal entry. So making that just a part of it. And if I knew exactly where we were going to go and some of the experiences, it's good to have some pre-reading or some pre-understanding about what we'll see and what they can expect. Because what am I doing now? I'm programming their brain to look for this particular tenant. I'm looking for the depth of the Hoover Dam, for example. I'm
Yes.
looking for the creator of it. And now things are changing. But you want to give them something, some look fors.
Yes.
So because sometimes they're looking and they have no idea, this big man, I see these big craters, but I don't know what I'm looking at or what I'm looking for. Giving them some kind of prepping them before you go with some look fors, and then say, now, what else did you find? Yes, you found this. We pointed out that look for, but what else did you see? And it really opens up their mind, their thinking. I think it gets them ready for more entrepreneurial inspiration
Absolutely.
to find out what is available. I mean, the job that I want to secure, what will that look like in 10 years? What will it look like in 15 years? Those are questions we have to ask ourselves and ask our young people.
And now the preparation is different because of all the
Yes.
technology that
Yes.
we have at our fingertips. We can Google the place
Mm-hmm.
before we go. We can do research, go to a website, but then there's something about being able to touch something,
Yes.
being able to put your hands on something, being able to experience a vacation or experience a location, experience a site
Yes.
before after you do the research.
And I think, and this is, I guess, a question for you too, Pastor, but I think the ultimate goal of any kind of education is that we promote self-learning,
Yes.
that we so inspire that there's a trigger now where children or young people, young adults or adults, now begin to search things out for themselves. So when I think about the motivation for something like that whole self-learning, it's like finding their bent. We're training children the way they should go, but I want to be able to identify their bent. What is it that they're interested in? I think about my older son. I could tell when he was 2 years old, this kid's going to be a drummer because everything is
Yes.
a drum. So we look for those giftings and those talents that are embedded in our young people and begin to devise self-learning opportunities where they can begin to discover some things on their own. So, let's talk a little bit about the motivation. What motivates a student or a learner now to that highest level of learning where I am owning this learning myself and I am going to really dig in myself to find out exactly more about this particular topic?
When we tap into that child's passion,
Yes.
when we discover the passion, you talked about your son, everything was a drum.
Right.
So drumming and the beat of the drum
Yes.
was a passion.
Yes.
And there's some innate things that are connected to the passion. There's some talents, there's some giftings, but it is up to us as parents, as educators, to bend that child toward his or her destiny.
And so how do we do that, especially in higher ed? I think it's probably easier to identify, maybe, I don't know, but easier to identify in younger children because we have to watch them more.
Right.
But we're not really watching the adult learner. It's pretty much on your own.
One of the things that we do, we talked about career exploration. It just looks
Yes.
differently for the adult student. Maybe taking a class in an area that you may have an interest but have never pursued the interest. One of the other things that we do is career assessments, which is
okay.
a personality profile, a skills inventory, which will tell you in the analysis which careers, which majors you're most likely to pursue. So based upon that, in academic advising, we develop a course schedule and exposing that student. And by the end of the first or maybe even the second semester, we've been able to hone in and discover the passion.
Okay. Have there been times when the assessment and the conversation didn't align?
Absolutely. The assessment and the conversation didn't align. So you alter the conversation, say, this
Yes.
is what the assessment says, but tell me about your experiences. Tell me about your dream job. One of the exercises I do with
Okay.
young people and the young at heart is if you could go into your dream job or dream opportunity today, if money was not a factor, resources wasn't a factor, where would it be? What would you be doing? And I'm astounded by the answers that I receive. And I say, okay, you've shared with me your dream job. Now let's develop the plan to help you get there.
I think that's good. And I think one of the challenges that we face today that probably we didn't have to encounter years ago was how quickly the world is changing.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. And so we're always having to reinvent ourselves for the next, because there's some jobs that existed 20 years ago and even 10 years ago that don't exist now. And it might have been a career choice, but now it looks different. And as things change, can I make that adjustment? And one of the things that I'm telling people is always be prepared. Learn something new. In fact, I've challenged everyone, even in our congregation, this year, I want everyone to learn something new. And every month I ask them, okay, how many of you have learned something new? Because we never know what jobs will be open by the time some of our young people are ready to graduate.
Absolutely. And you talked about the jobs that don't exist that from 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yes.
I also thought about the jobs that now do exist.
Yes, yes.
For example, 20 years ago, you didn't have a social media manager.
Yeah,
And you certainly didn't have
That's
a
true.
social media influencer.
That's
and
true.
oftentimes we have young people or the young at heart that come to the educational community, regardless of whether it's K-12 or higher education, with career choices that we may not necessarily be prepared for.
That is so true, especially if we've been around a while.
Right.
And what really blesses me is when I have someone that I want to say senior or more mature in age come and have a conversation about what else they want to do. I just applaud them
Yes.
for being still wanting to be relevant. You recognize now this is kind of fading out, but you still have enough energy and enough life in you and force in you to pursue a different career. And it's just amazing to watch people say, well, I want to go back to school. This is happening now. I want to be a part of this. So I think there's a desire for all of us to be relevant no matter what, but it always keeps us like on the edge, on the cutting edge. As educators, we're on the cutting edge. We've got to know what's coming next so we can prepare this generation for the next.
Absolutely. Bishop, it's always a pleasure. It's always a joy. But guess what? We are out of time.
Oh, no. It's time already.
It's time already. So as we prepare to close another episode of The Future is Now, closing comments about educational environments.
If I were to talk to parents and anyone out there that might be listening today, please make sure that you are assessing your environment, that in your household. I want to start in your household because that's where we have control. We have control in our household. In our household, I want to make sure that we are organized, that we are systematic in having the tools and the resources there for children to be successful, and that we as parents and grandparents are contacting teachers so that we know what students are being asked to complete. We understand the task. We understand the goals that have been set for our children. That environment is key. And if I have learned, and I'm still learning because I'm a lifelong student also, I have learned that if we make education a priority, we'll have children that will always be lifelong learners. And life won't leave them behind because they will always be relevant.
Thank you. And there you have it. And in closing, I would just like to share with our listening audience on behalf of Ivy Tech Community College that we do have a K-14 department that facilitates an iExplore Day for upper elementary and middle school students, as well as iCareer Days in various different areas for our high school students, as well as career exploration opportunities for the returning adult. So please don't hesitate to reach out, 260-482-9171. My direct extension is 2512, so we'll get you connected with whom you need to speak. Again, it's always a pleasure, Bishop.
Thank you, Pastor. Likewise, for sure.
Yes. The future is now. Education is the key to success, for the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. God bless.